The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Whitting.
Does someone need to experience a life-threatening crisis to gain the lessons learned from a near-death experience? Or can we reach the same awareness through meditation? Welcome to NDE Radio, brought to you by IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. I'm your host, Lee Whitting. James Bean is a comparative religion scholar and a book reviewer, author, public speaker, broadcaster with a broad familiarity with global religions and spiritual traditions. He's been involved with public radio, Radio for Peace International, the community radio movement, Wisdom Radio, and is an independent producer currently creating programs for several stations. James, welcome back to NDE Radio.
Hi, welcome. Yes, thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, good to have you. James, in your article, Light and Sound Are Within You, you wrote, "There is much more to meditation than stress reduction. It can also serve as a tool for inner exploration or enlightenment. And for the mystically inclined, meditation can even be a portal to the divine, or, as Rumi would say, a window to God." So it sounds like meditation could parallel the NDE experience.
Yes, for some, and it's kind of a lesser-known approach to meditation. When most people hear the word meditation, they probably think of stress reduction. And where it's gained a lot of ground and recognition in recent years has been, I think medical and holistic, kind of practitioners have focused on that aspect of meditation. But of course, meditation goes back to the saints and mystics of all of the great world religions as a kind of tool like prayer to access the divine. And so the full practice of meditation is very much a part of the spiritual journey and goes back to ancient times and is a connection to the divine, that has been practiced for, at least all of recorded history, but I suspect probably much longer than that.
Right. One of the things about a near-death experience is that sometimes the brain is totally incapacitated, and it seems like the connection, the experience, the vision is coming more through the soul than through the brain. Do you think that can be paralleled in the meditation experience?
Yeah, mystics who have inner experiences, according to the teachings I'm familiar with, it's really the soul. The third eye is the eye of the soul. It's been described as third eye or single eye, and it connects to the brain, but is really a separate thing. In the spiritual traditions, generally speaking, you have the body, the mind, and then there are different terms in different traditions for the soul, which is a distinct, separate thing from mind and body. And it has an ability to see and hear. And so any kind of visionary experience that's not a product of the mind is coming from the soul part of the human being, is able to see and hear in another way, a spiritual hearing, spiritual seeing.
And how do you know when it's the soul and not the brain that you're communicating with?
Well, through experience in meditation, people can get kind of a sense of what's happening if what they're seeing is the result of concentration and meditation. And once you break off your meditation and go read the New York Times or go do something else, the mystical vision disappears and goes away. Mystics do try to guard against phantasmagoria, the more of a mind-based kind of vision. If you believe in Elvis hard enough, you might be able to get him to appear. There's some possibility of the mind on its own generating For instance, when there is that point between being awake and starting to doze off, you're into sort of a dream-like state or semi-dream-like state. That's considered more the mind. When you're almost ready to fall asleep and you're in that kind of hovering between the waking state and the sleep state. Anything that is experienced then is generally not considered to be real, but more like dreams, and is not necessarily an exalted state, a different state of consciousness or anything. But through meditation, it's possible to discover this whole other part of ourselves and get to know it. And so anything that goes on, it's based on concentration or attention. And so you can enter into an experience of divine light and then break off your meditation. And then it's like tuning the radio, going from one station to another.
It's one of the things that people who start meditating talk about is the sort of the chatter that your brain interferes with, sort of the monkey brain, I guess they call it, where it's
just monkey mind.
The monkey mind, where it's just nonsense stuff or distraction from where you really want to go. And how much of a problem is that?
That is actually the biggest obstacle to spiritual practice, is the mind as sportscaster, if you will, giving you the play-by-play. When you sit in silence, absolute quiet silence, you can hear your thoughts so loudly. It's kind of analogous to being in a dark room, and when you light a candle, that the light of the candle is very bright. Whereas during the daylight or outdoors, the light of the candle would be dwarfed by all of the other light. And when you're sitting in absolute silence, you can really hear your thoughts very well. Non-productive thinking, worrying about the future, remembering things about the past, and you find it challenging, or typically most people find it challenging to find the off button, to just not think for a while. And so spiritual traditions usually recommend, pretty much east and west, people adopt a mantra. And this gives the mind something to do that keeps it occupied or subdued to some degree. So a mantra, a sacred name, depending on your orientation. And there are spiritual traditions within Christianity, Judaism, Catholicism, Buddhism, Hinduism, etc., all with their methods that one can follow. And so mantras may vary from the Jesus prayer of Eastern Orthodoxy in Christianity to some other mantra, depending on your tradition. Or if you have no tradition, you can just adopt a sacred word. You can create your own sacred word to use as a mantra, and you just slowly repeat that word, and that will give your mind something to do and becomes kind of an automatic process, and that will quiet the mind. That's one major tool that everyone recommends adopting for those. That's really what you'd call the first step of meditation, really, is adopting a mantra and then slowly repeating that word in order to break out of the normal routine of thinking, worrying, planning, reminiscing, all of the things the mind typically will do. It's the closest thing we're going to get to an off button, I think, for the mind.
Should it be a sacred word? I mean, should it be, say, the name of Jesus for a Christian, or I know Om is a popular one in the East.
Yeah, Om is big, and yeah, I would say, if someone is totally secular, they could probably come up with a secular name and kind of a almost like what transcendental meditation has tried to do. It has sort of a faith-neutral kind of approach to meditation. Anyone could do that. But yeah, if anyone is coming from a religious perspective, including evangelical Christianity, you can find within that tradition your your fellow mystics, fellow meditators. In Catholicism, there's Centering Prayer and the John Main Christian Meditation Society. Of course, a lot is going on in Buddhism when it comes to meditation. Whatever your faith, you can hook up with meditators and mystics within that tradition, and they will have in your language, and the version of this approach to meditation is all very much part of every tradition.
It seems to have evolved more fully in the Eastern tradition and the Eastern religions, though, and in fact, I think some probably fundamental Christian groups would say that it's an open invitation to the demonic coming into your mind to open yourself up that much. Why do you suppose that Eastern religions are so much more mature and developed along meditative lines?
Yeah, they've had a longer period of time to be intact, I think, for a long time. Of course, in India and other places to the east, they've had wars as well and disruptions. But in the West, there's been so much decimation. The Library of Alexandria was burned not once, not twice, but 3 times, just to make sure every book of the library was torched. And the pogroms against and holocausts against Jews, including followers of Kabbalah, and the destruction of the Essene group near the Dead Sea in Qumran, the people that hid away their scrolls just before the Romans took over their Qumran compound there. And so in the West, there's a lot of reinventing of the wheel, losing the knowledge and then having a Renaissance reboot and getting it back again. So in the West, although, Pythagoras was ancient, Jesus was ancient, Moses and those Jewish mystics have been around for eons, but their traditions are very suppressed from time to time, and so they start over again. You might say we're kind of younger or newer, kind of always reinventing the wheel again and again.
I know some people try to account for Jesus' wisdom by saying that when he was a child or a young man, he went to the East. There are stories without any particular evidence to back them up that he learned it all from the Eastern religion.
Yeah, there are some folks that have said that. I've never embraced that belief, although the Apostle Thomas, there's a very strong tradition of Thomas going to the East. And that's pretty much universally believed, from Orthodoxy to, people in India. The Thomas Christians of India certainly believe that, and the Church of Thomas there now. But as for Jesus himself, I've never thought of Jesus as having done that. But he had teachers, growing up in Israel, and he became part of the John the Baptist group and inherited a portion of that and became a kind of successor to John the Baptist and commenced his ministry at the death of John the Baptist. But yeah, in the West, I collect scriptures, and there's a lot about meditation in the West, but it's very small numbers of people that follow the Western equivalents, whereas in the East, of course, Buddhism and Hinduism, Jainism and the Sikhs, those are very big and tend to be more out in the open with spiritual practice. In the West, it's just small groups of Jews and Christians, and it's kind of almost an underground thing in Western religion still.
I know one of your favorite books is the Gospel of Thomas, and I'm wondering, do you think that was written before he went to the East?
I think Thomas. Well, I think the sayings of those are mostly Thomas's sayings of Jesus. Many of those are also found in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And the debate amongst some of the scholars is Thomas independent kind of witness to this hypothetical document called Q, or who is first. So some believe the sayings of Jesus found in Thomas are slightly earlier than their counterparts in the New Testament. But it's hard to know for sure. But those would be basically just sayings during his mission, during the latter part of his life. People wrote down.
Could Thomas actually be Q?
Maybe.
In other words, a more complete version of Thomas?
Yeah. Certainly Thomas is related to Q and is a similar format of Q. And so it's as if someone had access to Q, in addition to Matthew, Mark, and Luke, who quoted this, have these sayings in common that they were all quoting as if they had a collection of the sayings of Jesus in front of them and decided to quote them every so often. And Thomas, the book of Thomas did as well. Have access to Q, but what the Thomas format, though, instead of a gospel with a lot of stories about Pharisees and Sadducees and stuff going on, it's just a wisdom gospel. And so when you have no story but all sayings, it really becomes like a collection of the proverbs of Jesus, or a wisdom gospel, I think, is what some of the scholars would call it.
Right.
A love of the teachings.
To get back a little to the relationship between meditating and NDEs and so forth, you mentioned when people are falling asleep that it can be a mind thing, but that's also a time when people find they're having an out-of-body experience, where they actually feel their soul leave their body and perhaps travel to another place. Can you reach that by meditating as well?
Meditation, you can. You can indeed. Yeah, meditation, when we close our eyes and begin practice, it's a process of ascension, really. And if we have just a little bit of guidance, it's possible to, through meditation, get to some of the same realms as one gets to, in a more traumatic sort of way, of course, through an NDE. So this is more of a gradual approach through meditation, and yes, that can lead to an experience of visions, a tunnel opening up, and some of the same insight that one would get from an NDE. The same idea, only through meditation, when there's no medical trauma whatsoever to it.
Mm-hmm. Now I know you teach classes in how to meditate, and I thought maybe you could talk our listeners through the process of beginning to learn how to meditate.
Yeah, and I can email these instructions. I have some instructions which I can send to people. I'll give out my email address, and then people can get this and then try it at home.
Terrific.
But yeah, I can run through these steps of meditation and illustrate. It'll give a sense of how meditation can be a tool for exploring inner space. Step one, of course, would be to find a time and place when you won't be disturbed. Typically, every day, a good time to meditate. Pick that time. Could be early in the morning, could be in the evening, whatever works best for the individual when things are quiet and they can leave their phone shut off and aren't likely to be interrupted. Step number 2 is really getting comfortable. Sometimes when people first try meditating, they want to sit in the lotus, sit cross-legged in the lotus posture for the very first time in their life, and that's a bad idea because you discover that you lose circulation to your feet, and it's not comfortable at all. So it's good to be comfortable, to sit up straight, so one is focused, but comfortable in a chair or on a sofa or edge of the couch. Some posture that you're absolutely comfortable with, that you won't lose circulation or have any pain or need to fidget, which would of course break your concentration. So a good posture for meditation, and you close your eyes. Basically, you're gazing at the darkness lying in front of you within. And we mentioned a little bit already about a mantra. You adopt a mantra and repeat that name. In my tradition, it would be within your mind, a mental repetition of a chant. But some people, of course, especially if they're new at this, might pick a name and then softly speak vocally, speak this name, Om, 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 or whatever word it is. You'd actually say it very, very slowly and pause and then say it again. So one is, instead of being in a hurry, one is kind of being slowed down by this repetition of a name, like once every 15 seconds or so. And so that's the launching pad. You're staring into the darkness in front of you with eyes closed, comfortable, not moving physically, just chanting your word, gazing into the darkness. And here, in this darkness, think of the darkness in front of you as like a movie screen, and you're just staring at this screen, looking for something there. And it's going to be different, of course, for everyone. Some might say, I just see darkness and that's it. But quite often over the years, I've talked to people, and they've reported that when they're really still and concentrated, that they have noticed seeing light before in the darkness. Could be colors or stars. I remember someone said when they have a good meditation and get real concentrated, sometimes they see stars. And I thought to myself, well, yeah. People have been reporting that for millennia. Stars or colors or fireflies, clouds of light, some kind of light. And that's a very important thing when any light appears in your meditation. You just gaze at that light and enjoy whatever that vision is. And continue to do that, and it may change at some point to another kind of light. This initial light that you see is almost like a waiting room. You're floating in this inner space realm, and you may see in the darkness stars or colors or a cloud of light of some kind. And then another light might make itself known, and this can become a brighter light. This can morph into a tunnel of light or something more interesting. And this kind of light, if it's bright light, it doesn't hurt your inner eye, and it's actually a very soothing kind of light. It's an amazing thing to find the inner light. And so that's an important thing, to just contemplate the light, look right into the middle all the time of whatever scene that you're seeing, and it may morph into another vision of light. Like when you're surfing the web, you click and you're on another web page, and then you click again and you're off to another web page. The same within, there's a light, and then it can morph into another kind of light.
What would the possibility be for your encountering someone else, as often happens with an out-of-body or near-death experience?
That can occur. With this type of approach to meditation, and there's plenty of guidance about it in Sant tradition, Kabbalah, and Judaism, and the Sufi mystics have a lot to say about this too. Yes, with more concentration and journeying further into the light, it's possible to have the same kind of escort, like an angel guide or inner master radiant form of the Master, as we might say in the Sant tradition. And as with NDEs, the more advanced record of traveling through the heavens within, usually there's an inner guide involved in the process. The Book of Revelation starts off that way, even, angelic escort. And that's kind of typical with more advanced meditation, where you're beyond that initial stage and starting to really delve into the light. It's possible to have a guide with you. Some might call that an angel or inner master or some other figure. I'm not sure that passed on relatives, would figure in meditation. I haven't heard of that. Whereas, of course, in NDE experiences, that's quite common.
Yes.
To have your relatives, in some cases, kind of greet you. But that's of course, a different kind of thing. You're almost permanently crossed over. So, but in terms of meditation, an inner escort is fairly common, an inner master to escort you. And as it gets more advanced, that becomes kind of the standard thing, where you're journeying with your teacher, inside from realm to realm. And that's a very old, that's even recorded in scriptures, the ascent of the soul through various realms accompanied by a guide. That's a very old, people still follow that now and have been experiencing that for a very, very long time. I know of 2,000-year-old scriptures that have similar descriptions of that angelic guide that accompanies the person as they're on this journey, through different heavenly realms.
And it's usually the same guide that you meet from time to time?
The guide varies from person to person, tradition to tradition, and there are different theories as to what that might really mean. Some are of the opinion that there's a divine light, and someone is Catholic, or someone is Jewish, or someone is of a certain belief system, and so that light assumes the form that the person is most likely to willingly work with and be put at ease, to work with that. That's one way of trying to make sense of this. Is yes. Why do Christians see a certain kind of figure, and why would someone else from a different religion see a different figure? And they just assume that the divine light assumes a form that they know the person is willing to work with and would not be weirded out. If someone is Christian and all of a sudden, hi, I'm Buddha, that might throw them off. They might not
exactly.
know what to do with that.
Hey, so, James, in the minute and a half or so we've got left, why don't you tell folks how they can find your meditation material, and also find out more about your broadcasting, and your website? Give us that information.
Sure. Yeah, if anyone wants to receive the copy of the meditation instructions, I'll be happy to send that as an email. Just email me at this address, james@spiritualawakeningradio.com, james@spiritualawakeningradio.com. And that's my website, where people can find out about my activities and blogs and social media and everything else, spiritualawakeningradio.com.
Excellent.
Well, time
James,
sure flies when we're having fun.
It sure does. It always does. And I'm sure we'll have you back again. In fact, people should go back and look at our past shows, because I didn't look up the dates that you were on, but if they scan back through past shows, they'll find you're talking about light and sound in the heavenly realms. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today. My thanks to James Bean for sharing his insights on meditation. If you would like to listen to this show again, or any other of our previous programs, please visit our website at nderadio.org. And for more information about IANDS, please visit that website at iands.org. This is Lee Whitting saying thanks for listening.